Well, hey there, everybody, and welcome back to HC Conversations. My name is Phil.
My name is Paul.
All right, good to be hanging out with you all today. We are going to just have a quick recap of the message from this past week as we dove into a new series called the Not So Secret Sauce. And so, Paul, this was all you, buddy. First question for you. Why don't you, don't be laughing.
I'm laughing because it feels weird to be on this side of the conversation.
I'll
Normally I'm asking you the questions. I just realized I have to talk now.
Yeah. I thought you were going to say it's weird to be on this side of the table. I'm like, no, you're always on that side of the
table.
table.
I'm always on this side of the microphone, just not this side of the conversation.
Yeah. So first question is this. Before we get into yesterday's message, what is the premise of this series?
So the premise of this series is that when it comes to having a life full of God, or a full life, the life that Jesus promised,
the abundant life, yeah,
it's not a secret. That so many times we're taught implicitly or explicitly in the church that if you want to have the life that Jesus offers to you, then realistically you can never really have that until we die. And there's some truth to that, but it's a partial truth. That no, we can have access to that life now. We just have to do it. We just have to do the things that Jesus taught and his disciples teased out of his teaching for what it looks like to follow Jesus.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, because I think sometimes and you mentioned this on Sunday, that sometimes we think that the full life or the good life or the abundant life is only reserved for like super Christians.
Yeah, it's just for like a select few people that's like, well, they've grown up in the church, they've never done anything quote unquote bad, although
you don't know people very well.
You don't know people very well, and you don't know what the Bible talks about or you don't know what the Bible means when it talks about self-righteousness. Yeah. It's like that's just as dangerous. I mean, it's all throughout the New Testament. Jesus interacting with the religious leaders. That is not reserved just for special people. Yeah. That this is available to all followers of Jesus. And so some people, they've never heard that, so they don't know that then they have permission to walk in that way of Jesus. They think, well, maybe someday I will get there. And it's like, no, it's available right now.
Yeah, it's really sad, and just kind of weird that we've almost inverted, what should be normative for the Christian or the follower of Jesus is this full, abundant life, full of the power of the Holy Spirit. That should be normal, and to not walk in that kind of life is the abnormal thing.
Right.
It feels like in our Christianity today we've swapped that.
Definitely.
What's normal, is powerless, boring. A life that honestly looks no different than anybody else, just with a little Jesus sprinkle on top of it. And what seems abnormal is when somebody is really experiencing the fullness of their faith. And I think what you're saying in this series is, no, that should be flipped. We're all invited into this full life, and it's not a secret.
Right, and I think part of that happens, think about the book, The Rise and Triumph of the Modern Self.
Oh my gosh. Are we going to reference that book in every podcast from now on?
I think so, because he talks about, just the impact of Enlightenment thinking, and, kind of like tracing this to the church today, that we don't have a category for the spiritual realm. Even though when it comes to faith, we relegate that simply to the spiritual realm. And I'm going to come back to that in just a second. Okay. But we relegate faith to simply the spiritual realm, and we don't have a category for the spiritual realm. And so then when it comes to matters of faith, it's just belief. We don't actually do anything. We don't actually believe that we can be transformed. We don't actually believe that the Spirit can and still moves and does things today, because we're like, well, I can't measure that. I can't touch it. I can't feel it. So therefore, it doesn't exist.
It's not real. Yeah.
It's not real. It's not real to me. So that ends up in a Christianity that's weak, that's powerless. That is what we have today. And so the thought that I had was, well, we believe that things that when it comes to the spiritual life, that it's only for the super spiritual, and that it only involves the spiritual, and the spiritual doesn't really exist. And so faith doesn't really exist then either in the Enlightenment thinking. And so then we wonder why our faith is shallow, why it lacks power, why it lacks depth, why we're not growing. And then the second thing that's crept into that is this idea of dualism that we talked about in the last series, that we've separated body from soul. And so when it comes to matters of growing in our faith, we think that I just work on this ethereal spiritual realm, and that has no impact on my physical self.
Yeah.
When the Bible comes along and says, no, we are embodied souls, that we worship God with our whole selves, that if we want to be a disciple of Jesus and learn to walk in the way of Jesus, it involves our whole body.
Yeah.
And so often we're taught the opposite, that it doesn't involve our body at all.
Yeah. And just kind of piggybacking on that a little bit, it almost seems like, I know I've had this experience where if I try to follow Jesus in just with my body, just with physically, I'm going to do these things that almost feels like cheating. You know what I mean? Like, oh, but that's not spiritual, just, I'm going to follow you. I'm going to make myself serve, or I'm going to make myself, read my Bible. I'm going to do these things. And it's like, but that's not very spiritual. And again, that's just how we've divided that out. But I think what we lose sight of is that sometimes when you actually, starting with the physical embodied leads more into the spiritual. It's like, I don't feel the spiritual component of this. Well, do it anyway.
Yeah.
And you will. The crude way of putting it is like the phrase, fake it till you make it.
Yeah.
I mean, you're not really faking it, but this idea of, I want to be a person that has a powerful prayer life, and I don't have that right now. Well, just pray anyway. Pretend, what would it look like for you to be a person who prayed and had a powerful prayer life or whatever? And you're like, but I'm not that. Well, do it anyway, and do it every day. And eventually, you'll cross a line at some point. It's like, oh wow, this is actually, there's real power here. I want to be a person that has, I don't know, some of the virtues that we talked about yesterday. You'll talk about in the series, goodness and godliness and knowledge. It's like, I'm gonna act like a godly person, even if I'm not yet. And then eventually you find yourself, oh, I'm actually a godly person.
Yeah, because it comes in shaping your body. It's like developing muscle memory for how to do something. It's the same way, like if you're learning to play an instrument or you're learning to do something physical with your hands, you're developing muscle memory. So that way it just comes naturally. And so when it comes to being shaped by Jesus, it's that muscle memory of training our body, of bringing our body into control. And we'll talk about self-control in a couple of weeks. So that way our natural response is what the Spirit wants in the way of Jesus, and not what would normally come naturally.
Yeah. And then you get the second part of that, though, that's where it's not just our efforts, because then something happens when we are leaning into that with our physicalness. Then the Holy Spirit meets us in that and says, okay, now you've been doing these things. Now I'm going to be involved in your life and take it to a level that that you couldn't have done on your own. So
yeah, and so I like that idea of fake it till you make it, because that's so true in many areas of life. But especially, I think, when it comes to faith, to begin developing that habit. And we're kind of going off track, but kind of not. Thinking about prayer, and most people have a hard time praying. Well, that's, I think, because we sit down, we think we have to hold our hands like this or like this, and close your eyes. And
no, really, we just do that for children so they don't lose focus.
Maybe. And we wonder sometimes why we have a hard time praying, instead of involving our whole selves in the process, like trying to go for a walk first to kind of get us in that kind of mindset, that way, that involving our body. We have an embodied faith, and I think of Judaism. I remember when I was in Israel, and I forget where we had went specifically, but I saw at the Wailing Wall, or the Western Wall of the Temple Mount, but you see Jews that are praying, and they're just swaying back and forth because they're involving their body in the act of praying. And as Christians, so often because we don't think about that, we think it's just a spiritual thing, and we don't involve our bodies. Same with worship, why I invite people to raise their hands sometimes when I'm leading worship, or to clap, to get your body involved in the act.
I just think it's funny because, what did we just do?
We just walked and prayed.
When was the last time, on a Monday, that, we're praying for our church, that we actually, sat down and just prayed? I don't know.
I think part of that's because you like to move.
Well, I'm sitting here twitching as we're sitting here. Yeah, but,
I couldn't sit still in school though. I was always rocking in my chair and getting in trouble for tipping back in my chair 6 feet on the ground.
Yeah.
I'm like, no, 2 works just fine.
2 works just fine. But yeah, we walk laps in this little room while we're praying, because I don't know.
There's something different about it.
Yeah. So anyway, The point of the series is going to be the fullness of life, like that abundant life that Jesus offers. It's not a secret.
It's not a secret.
Anybody
God's
can
not
have
holding
it.
back.
Right.
And it comes from this idea from the Apostle Peter in writing to his church. And I'm actually in in a church in Asia Minor. I'm actually in the wrong letter of Peter. I need to be in 2 Peter. But Peter basically is combating this idea of Gnosticism in the church, that you have to have this secret knowledge in order to be right with God, to be saved. And quite honestly, that's how most churches operate. That's how most Christians operate, that you have to kind of attain to a certain level before God can accept you, that you have to know certain things in order to be made right with God. Yeah. And Peter comes along and says, no, that's not right. You don't have to have secret knowledge, because we have all that we need through the knowledge of Jesus, who has saved us from our sin. So we have everything that we need for life of godliness in Christ Jesus. The thing is, we're not doing it. We're not accessing the things of Jesus and of His Spirit. And Peter goes on to say, make every effort to add to the faith that you have, not just a mental thing, but a thing that you experience, because when you were saved by Jesus, you had an experience of Him. Yeah. So add to that experiential knowledge, and he goes through and he lists these different virtues. He says, make every effort to supplement your faith, or to add to your faith. And so often we get hung up on just faith, that then we don't make every effort. And I talked a little bit about that yesterday, that so often we wonder why our faith lacks depth, why it lacks purpose, why it lacks any kind of meaning. It's because we're not making every effort. And this idea of making every effort is orienting the sum of our life around, again, in this case, our faith, around the one who is believed to be worthy, the one upon whom we can put the whole, I guess our entire trust of our life. Like, we're sitting on a stool right now. It's that same picture. Like, we're sitting on Jesus, but we're putting the weight of our lives. Yeah. We're believing that He is the one that can support us.
Before we sit down, like, we have the trust, like, I'm not going to fall flat on my face right now.
Yeah, and so it's that idea of faith that Peter has in mind when he says, make every effort, orient your life around Him, around King Jesus. So often we orient our lives around our kids, their sports, their cheerleading, their dance, whatever. We orient our lives around work, success,
family events and responsibilities.
Yeah, and none of these things are bad in and of themselves. But when we don't orient our life around Jesus first, we end up making these other things God. Yeah. And we make every effort to do those other things, and we don't make every effort in our life to grow in godliness.
And not only like those things become idols, but those things actually get damaged because they're not.
Yeah, they were never meant to hold the weight of our life.
Exactly. I can't tell you how many stories and people I've talked to of times where it's like, especially in an area of like family or a relationship or kids, and it's like life oriented around that thing instead, like as a Christian, instead of my faith, and because of that thing was actually really unhealthy, and it fell apart. Family fell apart, the marriage fell apart, whatever. And it's like, if the priorities were in the right to begin with, like my faith in Jesus is where every effort is going to go, and all these other things are going to flow out of it. This is maybe a little cynical, but it's like, I keep hearing the phrase in my mind, and when you were saying it yesterday, Sunday, whatever, as well, I was like, oh, like Peter's like, every effort, make every effort. And so many Christians, it's not only they're not making every effort, they don't make any effort of just like, well, I'm a Christian, and that's about as far as it goes. Maybe I'll go to church sometimes. And I'm like I don't know. You look at all of just what life throws at you, what the world throws at you, culture around us, the lies we believe, the work of the enemy. I mean, just pain, suffering, like all of the things that get thrown at us. And then we make hardly any effort in the area of faith. And then we wonder why. And we're like, well, this Christian thing isn't working for me. Like, what do you mean it's not working for you? You've never actually done it.
Yeah.
And it's heartbreaking because it's because people are missing out on what Jesus is actually offering. It says, I've come to give them life to the fullest.
Yes. And because we live an embodied faith, that's so important. I kind of teased a little bit yesterday with our church that, people show up every 3 weeks. We know because we see a spike in our attendance every 3 weeks.
We can show you like the bar graph, like of the software we use.
For like the last 7 years, we have data that we can show you that every 3 weeks.
There's a drop. It's high attendance, drop. High, drop.
And
it's like little rolling hills of attendance.
We can, without a doubt, predict. It's like, okay, this is the second week of the month, so next week is going to be the high attendance month. The next week, we're going to have even fewer people.
And even past like a weekly thing, seasonally in the year, we're coming into late in fall, and our attendance pattern for years has been, as we move late into fall, like that October, November, our attendance is going to climb, and it's going to stay higher about through maybe about Easter, and then it's going to drop again. It's like, oh, go figure. It's lower whenever the weather's nice, and there's holidays and family functions and sports stuff. It's like, church isn't that important in those times of year. And it's like,
Yeah, and you might be hearing this and thinking, okay, you guys are being super legalistic. You want to hear our hearts on this, because we're not being legalistic when it comes to church attendance. But there's something important about the gathered people of God together. There's something sacred and holy that so often we don't talk about. And so especially after the pandemic, where we've been told, it's okay to show up to church every once in a while, to be involved in the community because you're being a witness to God and the church.
And there's truth in that.
And there's some truth in that, but most of the time you're not actually being a witness at those sporting events or whatever you're participating in. You're just not showing up to church. And what happens is you end up being shaped by those things and by culture instead of coming together with a group of people in a holy moment, a sacred moment, allowing the things of our gathering to shape us and to form us. And it has so much of a greater impact that leads to a life that is different, that is flourishing. Because something happens when we show up that on a Sunday morning, that God is moving in a way that he isn't moving when we're, just doing our personal quiet time, or when we're...
Well, and part of that is just like a theological understanding of like that's what the New Testament portrays in terms of like, okay, the indwelling of the Holy Spirit. Like we like to talk about how the Holy Spirit lives in every Christian as an individual, which is true. However, when the New Testament talks about like the power and the work and the indwelling of the Holy Spirit, it's often talking about it in a collective sense. That the gathered people of God, it's Paul. I don't remember which letter where he talks about like, is it Paul? It actually might be Peter. I don't know. Or whatever. You all are collectively being built up into a temple like of the Holy Spirit, like collectively, like the people of God coming together. There's something that's just different about it. I don't know.
So make every effort.
Right. And again, sorry, but it's not even just like we kind of got on church attendance for a minute because that's what, from our end as pastors, we have the data to like, oh yeah, here we can see how this is happening. But that's true in personal life stuff as well. Prayer and scripture and devotion and those kind of things of this Christianity isn't a magic bullet, a magic wand that's like, I'm a Christian now, and that just, in a way, it does change everything. But also, in a way, if you don't make every effort, it doesn't change anything.
Right.
So it's like you got to actually lean in. You got to do the things.
And then you wonder why your faith is weak and powerless. And we wonder why people are walking away from the faith. It's because they never actually had faith in the first place. Peter kind of touches on that, but especially James, the brother of Jesus, he talks about the fact that faith without works is dead. And the Apostle Paul talks about that God saved us to do good works in advance that he prepared for us, that we're saved by grace, not by works, so that no man can boast. It's not that we do good things to earn God's favor. No, we have faith, and now we live out that faith by doing things to show that we have been made right with God. And the first thing that Peter says to add to our faith, and it's not like a list of ingredients, like a recipe that you have to add these in a certain order. In fact, logically, they don't make sense. The most important things in this passage is that he begins with faith and he ends with love. And we can add things in any order in between then. But he begins then it says, add goodness to your faith. To go around doing good things. And I like what Nikki Gumbel says about this, that if we're going to do good, that we have to stay connected to the one who went around doing good, that showed us what it meant to live a life of goodness. So we have to stay connected to Jesus. Because salvation in the eyes of the New Testament writers wasn't just a belief, that salvation meant unity or solidarity with Jesus Christ, that it was connection with him, that it's no longer I who live, but Christ who now lives in me.
Yeah. And that idea, like doing good and flowing out of that, making, like as we were talking, making every effort. Like I hope y'all understand too. Like we're not just talking about like you. Like there are times when I know in my own life I'm not making every effort, and I feel that.
Yeah.
You know, where it's like, oh gosh, my prayer life has sucked lately, or I've not been in the scripture like I should be. And it's not a matter of guilt. It's a matter of, oh, I'm not actually, now that I'm not doing this like I should be, I'm not experiencing the fullness of life. I feel different. I think different. I feel a distance between me and Jesus. And so when we talk about, and when scripture talks about make every effort, like that's the heart behind it. It's like, well, you want to be connected. I loved how yesterday too, and it gets at this, how you talked about knowledge, like knowing Jesus is it's not just here, but it's an experiential knowledge. You want to talk about that?
Yeah, so it's an experiential knowledge. It's knowing somebody personally or intimately. Like I gave the example of my wife, that a lot of people know my wife, Jacoby, that they have a relationship with her, maybe they're friends with her, or they see her at church. And that's a different kind of knowledge. But the knowledge that the New Testament is talking about is what I have of my wife, or what you have of your wife, is that you've been married to her. I've been married to my wife, that I live with her. And I have experiential knowledge, a knowledge that goes beyond just a surface level understanding of who she is to a deeper level. And that's the knowledge that Peter's talking about, that we have of Jesus.
Yeah. And then as you talked about goodness, it seems though that when we live out that goodness, or we were made to do good works, as Paul says, we actually, in doing the good, we end up getting more of a knowledge of Jesus, because he is the one who is truly good. And like there's a coming together of the two things then. So
yeah, so we're challenged then to go out and to do good. And I don't know who it was that said, do all the good that you can, all the ways that you can, to all the people that you can.
Yeah.
But that's what we're called to then live out. And again, not as a means to earn God's favor, but because we already have God's favor, God's grace upon us, and as evidence that we are living in connection with the one who went around doing good all the time.
Yep.
And we do good because we truly want good for people all the time, and not just because it happens to be a certain theme or a month in our community that people are like, oh, let's go out and do all kinds of good stuff.
Yeah.
There's nothing wrong with that, but it's only surface level. It's shallow, it's self-serving, and not actually serving the other person.
Yeah. So often, like we'll see like initiatives, like whether it's a themed month or like a certain weekend or something, where it's like I'm going to do good at this specific time, and that's great. But if that's the only time, it's like if that's the only time you do good, then good is just something you do, not something that you are, right? Because it's like I'm just doing this because of this thing, versus I'm doing this because I've been transformed by Jesus. This is who I am all the time.
Yeah. And so then I wrapped up the message by talking about ways that people can figure out how to do good.
I'm so glad you did that too, because sometimes like people will hear a message and they'll be like, great, I'm supposed to do good.
Yay.
Like, where do I start?
What do I do? And I didn't get into clear, like, specific examples of like, okay, maybe you do this or maybe you do that.
Yeah.
It's like, no, like ask, what do people say that I'm good at?
That was the first bullet point.
That was the first bullet point. 2.
Hold on a second. Can you elaborate there the difference between what do people say I'm good at versus what am I passionate about? Because I thought that was so key.
So I said, and I don't remember who said it first. It might have been John Tyson or somebody. They're talking about, so often we're told to pursue our passions. In high school, the guidance counselor, and if you're a guidance counselor, no offense to you, but maybe you'll take this advice instead. They say, just follow your heart, figure out what you're passionate about, and do that for the rest of your life. If you do that, you'll never work a day in your life. I remember hearing that in school.
That's so not true.
That's not true. But instead, find what you're good at already. Develop habits and become better at those things, and you'll discover that you're passionate about that thing instead of starting with your passions. Because what's the thing about passions? They wax and wane over time. It's why people they get passionate about something in high school. They go to college and then they quickly change majors because they realize, I don't actually like this. I'm not actually good at this.
Yeah.
So let me keep finding the next thing that I'm passionate about because that's what they tell me I should do. Instead, let's develop.
What am I good at?
A habit around what we're good at. So first, what do people say that I'm good at? Okay. The second thing is, okay, what is exciting to you? What makes you, what is your passion then? Okay. So start with what you're good at.
So passion's important. It's just not the main thing.
It's not the main thing.
Okay.
Because again, it waxes and wanes. It's fickle. I think it's Lumineers, how fickle my heart, how woozy my eyes. It's so true. Our hearts are fickle beyond measure. The second thing is, what do other people say that I'm good at? So what am I good at? What do other people say that I'm good at? So that kind of validation from a community of people. It's not just me and my heart. It's okay, what do other people see?
Somebody else has seen this in you.
Then finally, what is it that breaks God's heart, basically? Okay. So where is a need in my community that that lines up with what God breaks God's heart?
Okay, so run through those again. What am I good at?
What excites me? What am I passionate about?
What do other people say I'm good at?
And then
what breaks God's heart? Where's his
heart?
mission at?
And then find ways in your community where those things overlap, and begin to then do good works in that realm.
Very good.
So if you want to watch the whole message, go to our website, hcminerva.church. You can find the full message on there, or it will be on our YouTube channel, which is where you're likely finding this. So,
yeah, it is.
What are we doing next week?
Next week,
because somebody else is giving the message. Scott's giving the message.
Elder Scott is going to talk about the second thing in that list of virtues.
I guess we'll just have to talk about him.
Is knowledge. So we'll either have to talk about him or maybe coordinate schedules. We can get a guest appearance. Yeah. We need another microphone.
But
we'll figure that out when the time comes.
Thank you, everybody. Have a great week.